To us monotheists, there's one God, the greatest God that has ever existed and that ever will exist. But through the Christian community, questions rage. Where did God come from? His aseity, his divinity. And today we're going to dive into some of the most popular questions that a lot of us have had in the past or still currently do have. So, Malik, let's talk about the beginning and the end, or just God and his existence all through aseity. What do you think? What's your opening thoughts?
Well, so okay, this is my opening contingent for this is funny I say contingent, but the principle of like something casual, right? Something that has casual essence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even something as simple as casual requires a necessary being,
Mm-hmm.
even in casual, right? Because if something has casualty, something had to move in order for it this casual thing to exist, right? So you have to have an uncaused cause, a a a mover to create movement, right? So uncaused cause and a mover that can create movement,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is the thing that helped me understand that God is not only powerful, but he's also eternal.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for example, Big Bang Theory, right? The Big Bang Theory, as we know, it had a beginning, right? So if the Big Bang had a beginning to the universe, something had to cause this Big Bang in order for the Big Bang to exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say we just agree that the Big Bang is real, right? Which I don't agree necessarily with the Big Bang, but let's just say it's real, right? Even for the Big Bang Theory to exist, you have to have a uncaused cause, something that exists before time and space exist in order for this to exist.
So you're saying that for the Big Bang Theory to have occurred, there needed to be a cause of this, meaning everything in alignment to combust at the same exact moment, like that?
Yes,
Okay.
something or someone had to cause this for it to
Well,
happen. Because
but
what Big Bang Theory says, this is what Big Bang Theory says. Big
mhm.
Bang says that nothing came into something, right? So me and you came from Big Bang, which was there was nothing before, right? Which this would be impossible because there's nothing that we have found evidence for at all where nothing comes from nothing. So therefore, if we are thinking logical, right, something, not only just something, but something that is intelligent enough had to be intelligent to create a Big Bang in order for the Big Bang to create us. So you have to have not only an uncaused cause, you have to have a being and you have to have intelligence,
Okay,
right?
question.
It's kind of like, go ahead, ask.
Okay, I have a question. So what you're claiming is that there was a organizer of some sort of the Big Bang Theory, if it existed.
Yes,
But
because go ahead.
to but from that theory, don't they call it like a happening, just like a coincidence, just like everything aligning it, like perfect coincidence? They don't see it as a construct of somebody who like a god, like God creating the Big Bang and allowing it to happen. They kind of just see the stars aligning basically, and then it
Yeah,
happened.
exactly. They want us to believe in the Big Bang that nothing came into something, right?
Right.
That's like me. Think about this logically. People who believe in the Big Bang theory that nothing came from something is like me saying right now we're on this camera, right? That's like me saying, "Oh yeah, this camera came from nothing." No, it's you will be called insane. You will be called, crazy if I grab this camera right now and said, "Yeah, this camera just came out of thin air." No, someone created this camera. There was a creator to the camera, right?
Mhm.
There was a creator to the iPhone. There's a creator to the MacBook. Someone that had to create this piece. Someone had to create this mechanism, this subject, this item in order for it to do things, right? So to tell me that nothing created the earth is illogical if you really think about it, because my iPhone here, right, had a creator. And if I told you, yeah, I just, woke up one day and the iPhone was sitting in my face, you would call me crazy.
Right. Right. I think that it's the easy way out.
Yeah,
Honestly,
exactly.
it's the
It's
easy way
literally
out.
just there to disprove God. That's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, it's disingenuous. It's just saying, let's just throw something together so we don't have to deal with this question, right? Because I think that the truth and the answer to it makes people a lot more uncomfortable than something illogical, which is
Mhm.
weird. It's weird how the truth makes people kind of scrounge in their seat versus trying to perceive something to be like out of thin air. That's better than the actual truth. So my first point, I want to take it to scripture, and this is Isaiah. So and y'all can look it up, or if Malik, you want to bring it up on screen, Isaiah 40 verse 17 through 23. So in this chapter, Isaiah portrays God as the uncreated creator of all things. And I think that's interesting. That word choice specifically, it's a description that I put in my notes, but the uncreated creator makes the wheels turn in my head, right? Because now I'm thinking about the fact that God has existed since existence was a concept. And that kind of
Exactly.
that's the thing that makes people uncomfortable. It makes people uncomfortable to not be able to pinpoint a creator of the creator. And so subsequently, if something was to be greater, right, than God, then, and of course, we understand that there's nothing greater than God. But if there was, then that would just make that thing ultimately God, because God is the greatest being that ever exists. You see what I'm saying? So we keep trying to get away from the concept of God and move to try to rename something that is greater to be able to create God. And then what? Then that being that created God, that has to have a being that created it. And then that's just a infinite amount of creators until what? We
Yeah,
hit a wall.
yeah, exactly. So you have to think about it like this. Everything in the universe, it exists, right?
Mhm.
As we know, it exists. But just as easily as it exists, it could not have existed, right?
Yes, 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 yes.
So because we know that, because we're here and we exist, but we could have easily just not existed the way that we do exist, right?
Mhm.
This means that someone intelligent and personal had to create us for us to exist. Why? Because if you're saying to me that we exist out of chance, is no different than me saying, you know, I exist because I want to,
Mhm.
right? I just
Yeah,
say I want to exist. So because I want to exist, I'm going to I'm going to poof another me. You can't do that.
mhm.
Right? You can't do that. So something eternal, something that is beyond our measure, that's not bounded by time or space, could create time or space, because we know time exists, we know space exists, we know planets exist, we know beings exist, we know animals exist. So something beyond these existence of these things had to have the power, the intelligence, and the the eternal infinite to exist in order to create something.
Absolutely. But it brings me back to that initial point where I'm saying this understanding makes people uncomfortable because it means that we're ultimately preserved through the will of God, meaning that our existence is determined by his attention, basically. If
Correct.
God just decides to stop paying attention to us, or if God decides that our purpose is no longer necessary, then we are annihilated. We no longer have existence. That's the uncomfortability. There's a need for us to be for
A
us to be
necessity.
a necessity.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a need for us innately to be necessary. But the only being that actually is necessary is the being that creates, but did not require creation, which is God.
Exactly. Because in order for there to be a dependent, there has to be an independent, right? It has
Exactly.
to be. It
Yeah.
has to be, right? Our children are dependent on us, right? But we're independent from them,
Yes.
right? So, in order for something to create a universe, right, to create the stars that align, etc., right, there has to be something that is independent of that necessary item, right?
Hmm.
So the solar system is necessary for our survival, right?
Right.
So that means there's something that has to be beyond the necessary item of the solar system, which means in order for a solar system to exist, someone who does not need a solar system would
Has
have
to
to
exist
exist.
to
Exactly.
create that.
Exactly.
Right. It's a flow of
Exactly.
events, basically.
Exactly.
But the
Exactly.
sequence is like a perfect recipe that someone's created.
Yes. Yes.
But wouldn't you? Okay, I have a question for you, and you can take the advocate of a person who's not a believer or a worldly understanding when you're answering this, because this is most people's question. So if someone has created this perfect, like I said, recipe for us to exist, then that is up to their discernment ultimately, you know. So now when we circle back around to the preservation of this, it kind of brings question into, are we the only focus of God? Meaning, are because we know, we understand as
Basically,
believers.
are you
I
asking?
just want to expound this
Yeah.
and to bring it back around. So we understand as believers that there was only an Old Testament at one point, right? But then through God's will, we get Jesus, which is God in the flesh, and then we get the new covenant, the New Testament, right? But at a time period, there was only the Old Testament. So what I'm saying is there was a time period where the understanding of Christ was not necessary or just didn't exist, right? But that was a different existence at that time and a different way to abide by God's law. And so what I'm saying is, just as the Old Testament was not in the knowledge, was the New Testament was not in the knowledge of the people that existed during the time period of only the Old Testament, are there other beings that are living and abiding by laws that are outside of what we understand? Because there was still the creation of the New Testament, even if it hadn't been brought into existence yet. We just didn't know about it as human beings, but God does.
I don't.
Um,
I don't. You said a lot. I don't. You said a
okay,
lot.
what I'm saying is,
Gotta ask you directly.
what I'm saying is, do you think that us existing as human beings is basically the only purpose that's being served right now? It's the only thing being served at this moment. We're the only things that God is paying attention to
Basically,
right now.
are you asking? You still not being direct. Basically are you asking, are humans the ultimate purpose in God's eyes?
Yes, are we important? Are we final?
Well, okay. So you have to look at this, right? How would we find our importance, right? Or our value, right? Look at a
Mhm.
couple things. Does it say that animals are made in God's image?
No,
So you can't find a line where it says a lion is made in God's image, can you?
no, but a line serves purpose, doesn't it?
But that's not what we're saying.
Okay.
Lions serve purpose in the atmosphere of the earth. But what I'm saying is you don't find that a lion is made in the image of God,
Right.
right? You don't find a shark is made in the image of God,
Mhm.
right? And also when you look at other animals or other beings or other life forms like plants or any of these things, right? Doesn't matter the size. So let's say, for example, let's say you take 10 gorillas, right? 10 gorillas by nature could out could outpower any man, right?
Hmm.
But what does man have that gorillas don't?
Um,
A,
Intelligence, tools.
a conscience,
Yeah.
a conscience, and a brain capacity that these animals don't have, right? Which allows us, which allows us to have superiority over the earth.
Hmm.
And the purpose of having the superiority of the earth is for our purpose of the greater good, which is to spread the likeness and the love. Right? This is our ultimate purpose. Our ultimate purpose is to love each other and to love God. Right?
Hmm.
This is why we have souls, we have consciences, we have spirits, because we are beyond, we are beyond just a being, right? We not only have a being, but we have a spirit in personhood, right?
Hmm.
Versus animals, they don't have a spirit, right? They don't have a spirit, which is why they can do things in nature that humans can't do in nature, right? A lion and a lion can go at it and harm each other, and it not be deemed as taboo.
Hmm.
But humans cannot do the same thing. Humans, it's not gonna be seen as natural or normal for humans to go at each other to the death. That's not normal. Why? Because we have a innate creation into us, because we're made in the image and the likeness of an eternal being, right? Who created us for the purpose of superiority over the earth he created for us, which means we have an ultimate purpose, which is to serve him and to serve each other. So yes, we are looked at a higher standard than animals and plants and trees and water, because we were given the authority over the other creations he made on the earth.
I have a, and that makes sense. That makes sense to me. I wanted to rephrase my question because through your explanation, I just kind of understood what exactly I'm asking.
Hmm.
God is eternal and
Hmm.
infinite,
Yes.
based on the fact that He deems His necessity based on creation. He's the creator of all
Yes.
creation.
Yes.
So He created us, and we're creators through Him as the we get that. So what I'm saying is, are we eternal? Because it says that through Jesus Christ, the just, or let's just for this understanding, let's use righteous. The righteous will have everlasting life, right? But then the wicked, even though they're wicked, they still have eternity as well.
Hmm.
So that makes us eternal beings. And is God defined by his eternal essence? Is he defined by that? Is he defined as a being that has always existed as eternal?
Is he defined by us? No.
No, not by us, by his necessity and his eternity. That's kind of what helps us understand him as God, right? Because there's attributes of him as goodness and all of those things to describe his character. But ultimately, we understand him as being here before creation, before
Sure.
anything has ever existed. So he's eternal and necessary. Are we
Yes.
eternal and necessary through him? Not in
Exactly.
comparison to him, but as
Yeah.
subcategories
Yeah.
of.
Yeah. Yeah. I get what you're saying. We are eternal and necessary because he made us to be Christ-like.
Okay.
He made us to be a fleshly image of him, because like we said on the last segment, right? God is indivisible, where flesh is divisible, right?
Hmm.
God is independent, where flesh is dependent, right? So the purpose of us is to be eternal, which is why the importance of believing in Christ is important, because he's trying to get us to be Christ-like. And Christ, when he resurrected, he was glorified, right? When he becomes glorified, he shows us that flesh could become eternal through believing in him,
Hmm.
right? The reason we're so important for him is because he wants to grant us eternity just like him, because he created us for the purpose. He wanted something to love and something to love him back.
Mm-hmm.
But how can an eternal person, an eternal being, love something that's not eternal? He couldn't, right?
It would just
So
be
he,
temporary.
it'll be temporary,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. But he doesn't want temporary. He wants eternity. So how can you give something that turns against you eternity, right? Said something that denies you or rejects you eternity. You show them your character, you show them your likeness, you show them your goodness, you show them your miracles, you show them you can suffer just like they can, you show them that you could bleed just like they can. This is the purpose of Jesus. He's showing us,
A
hey,
vulnerability.
a vulnerability. Hey, I can show you me in the flesh while I'm also trying to fulfill my plan of giving you eternity. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to show you myself on how to give flesh eternity. Jesus was the embodiment of human becoming eternal. When he
Mm-hmm.
resurrected, right? When he resurrected as the firstborn, right? It
Mm-hmm.
tells you in the Bible that Jesus, when he resurrected, was the firstborn from the dead. This is essential because this is proof and evidence that the human body can in fact become eternal. And it's the Bible is important because it's teaching us how to become eternal, which is what God is ultimately after, which is why we're so important, because he wants eternity with us, which is why he sends Jesus so that way he can show, hey, I can, even me as a deity, as God, I can live amongst you guys as well. I can live amongst you guys in the flesh. And I'm showing you how to get to eternity.
That's almost like prophecy, isn't it? Because it's basically almost like a foreshadowing of the new world. Because if he's
Yeah,
saying, I'm trying to like, basically, it's almost like a preparation of our minds to show us that Jesus could live among us. Because if we're going to go to heaven, ultimately, that's what you would be doing, essentially, living amongst God.
exactly. Which is why if you don't believe in him, right? He's not going to force you to live with him because we're talking about eternity, right?
Hmm.
He doesn't want to force you to eternity if you don't want to be there. That's holding you against your will. And a person who is just and loving wouldn't force someone to do something, right? I wouldn't force someone if I claim to be good, I wouldn't force someone to say, you better love me or else.
And this
Then
is a big
that's no longer love.
This is just a quick side note question that just popped into my mind. If we go to heaven and then we live amongst God, or the new earth and we live amongst God, are we living amongst Jesus and then there's still the entity of the Father in heaven? Or has that become one due to his resurrection and now new divinity? You know, because he's not in the flesh no more like we are, he's divine.
Well, honestly, if I'm being honest, I can't answer that
Yeah, it's not.
because
I
the
was
Bible
wondering.
doesn't. Yeah, the Bible doesn't specifically tell us that, but what it does tell us is this: it tells us that Jesus came, he
Mhm,
did things that only God could do, right? So we have a being who lived in the flesh like us, who did things that only a supernatural God could do, right? Resurrects and goes back to heaven, right?
mhm.
And then God says when he creates the new earth that he will live amongst us. So here's my only explanation that I can give. The first answer is I honestly can't give you the answer because he doesn't tell us. I don't know, right?
Mm.
But I can give you what I think, right? This is what I think. I think that Jesus is the person we will see in the flesh when God creates a new earth. God is revealing to us a familiar face, right? So
Mhm.
when we see Jesus in the new earth and in heaven, right, we won't be like, who's that?
Right.
We already are familiar with the name. So when we hear the name or see the face, we are familiar with who God revealed himself to be. He revealed himself to be Jesus,
The
right?
bond, the connection that we're
Exactly,
developing
the
on earth.
connection. So when you see Jesus, know that you saw God, which is why Jesus said, "Me and the Father are one," because what He's revealing to us is, "I am God in the flesh. If you touch me, you have touched the Father. If you
Mhm.
see me, you have seen the
Seeing the
Father."
Father.
So
Yeah.
I can only assume Jesus is saying, I am the visible
Yes.
God.
It's how you will perceive me.
Exactly. But it's still because he's God, right? When you're in heaven, right, and you can see Jesus in the flesh, right, as a body, but because he's divine, not only can he be in the body, but he can still do his duties on earth as a being omnipresent God.
Right.
So you'll see him in heaven as Jesus, but because he's all powerful, right? You'll be sitting down with him in heaven, having dinner with him, for example, right? But because he's also powerful, he can also connect himself to earth, right? And in earth, he can still be omnipresent at the same time while talking to you in heaven.
Yeah. That's
So Jesus is just a visible embodiment of God.
yeah. And isn't that so much of a gift? So much of a gift when he gives us something that is, I mean, I know we're of course created in his image,
Mhm.
but for him to create us in his image so that we can have that relatability. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? So
because
that we can have that connect.
he wanted something to love. That's why I'm saying
Hmm.
he's eternal, right? So
Hmm.
in being eternal and powerful, right? And he's good, not bad.
Hmm.
So he wanted to create something, which is, i.e., humans, that could spend an eternity with him. This is the reason he grants us eternity, because he wants to sit down with you. He wants to sit down with us. That's the ultimate goal, which is the ultimate goal when you read Revelations, why they talk about the new earth. The new earth is for God to physically, visibly live amongst his people.
So now what
No
I'm being
longer, no longer invisible, but visible.
right.
This is the purpose. An eternal God is deciding to turn himself from invisible to visible. This is the purpose he wants.
Hmm. And so now I'm being pushed down this path now in my mind to think. You know what I'm saying? My wheels is turning now. I'm being pushed to this. I just blurred, didn't I? I'm being pushed to understand or question. Not really question. I feel enlightened now to understand that life that we're seeing as of today is a process.
Hmm.
Almost it seems as the purpose of life is a process for like purification or preparation or training for a new life, because if eternity is something that we're destined for, then it's like this phase of preparation almost.
Hmm. So yeah, think about it like this. Think about it like this. People often question, why would God allow these things to happen? Why would he do this? Why would he do that? Why would he do this? Why would he do that? Right?
Yeah.
A lot of people have these questions. The ultimate purpose is for us to be in eternity with God, right?
Mhm.
So doesn't it make sense for God, who is all knowing, all powerful, to separate those whom want to do evil from those who have no intention of doing evil and those who want to do good,
Mhm.
right? If God is a just God and a loving God, right? It makes sense for him to vet, right? It makes sense for him to vet those whom come into the kingdom, right? It would only make sense. It's like let's say you start a new job, you start a new job at a sales company, right? Doesn't it make sense for the owner of that sales company to vet the people that's going to be in his business, or
Mhm.
should he just let anyone? This is the reason why we have background checks. We check people who went to jail, check people who did SA, these type of things, right? It makes sense for humans to vet, right?
Yeah, even when the Lord tells men, like gives the description of what a wife should be and how you should properly vet for that role in your life, He wouldn't tell
Exactly.
you just choose anybody. He would tell you to
Exactly.
have a proper discernment of what you're choosing.
Exactly. So if we as humans understand that we should vet, we should have discernment, all these different things, right? Who do you think gave you the capability and the brain capacity to be able to understand vetting and discernment?